Eers and Beers, episode 46. What's on tap? A little Kansas reaction, some transfer portal takes, and maybe a presenting name sponsor for the WVU Coliseum. But first, I'm Wesley Euler. He's Adam Crowley. This is Eers and Beers, the podcast, episode 46. As always, Mr. Crowley, how are we, and what are we drinking?
I could be better, but I'm drinking coffee. Black. What about you?
Are you actually drinking it black, or are you just making the semi-pro joke?
I'm making the semi-pro joke, but I do drink my coffee black, yes.
I do like a dash of half and half. That's it. No sugar, just like a kiss.
That's what my wife does. She does exactly the same thing. A little dash of half and half, and I get a little jealous because she can drink her coffee a little sooner than I can. Mine's a little too hot. There's an advantage there, but I just like the taste of black.
I love it.
Coffee.
Coffee. We are recording this Sunday morning once again. Yeah, so I'm jonesing on some coffee as well too. Hopefully everybody enjoyed their Saturday, maybe minus the result at the Coliseum, 71-58, the final score as Kansas wins. This basketball team has now lost 10 of their last 11 games, and you can basically kiss the tournament goodbye, right? Is that fair to say? Unless they go on a 4 or 5 game win streak here and win a couple games in the tournament, right? I mean, this thing's done and dusted.
We're going to look back on it and say that they kissed their hopes goodbye a while ago, probably when they lost that home game to Oklahoma, because you really felt like that could be their place to pull out of it. And then they probably should have beat Baylor on the road and didn't. They probably should have beat Texas Tech at home and didn't. And Taz Sherman missed those games. And it's just an unfortunate season. They're not going to make the tournament, which stinks because it's sort of warm out now and you can feel that it's March Madness time.
It's not warm. It's snowing out here in my house. That's why I got this toboggan on.
Well, it'll be like 54 degrees today.
It's true.
Back and forth we go on the weather, but it stinks because now you got to wait another year before you might have a chance to play in the best tournament in sports. It's a bummer. It sucks. I think it's a learning experience for Hugs, though. Hopefully he hits the portal hard. But man, I don't even think we can analyze the game. It's just It's lather, rinse, repeat. It's the same thing over and over again. They're not as good as Kansas. I mean, what were they going to do? They going to stop McCormick? I mean, he grabbed every offensive board. What are you? Mitch Lightfoot's walking dudes. Like, what are you going to do? You're just not good enough. You're just not.
You're not. I mean, you're right. It's all the same stuff, right? Like, they can't rebound. They can't move the ball in the half court. They can't make shots. They can't score in the paint. They can't close out on defense. And they took care of the ball yesterday, Adam. I was looking at that before we hopped on here. 15-5 in turnovers. I mean, you did a really good job there in points off of turnovers, which has been another area that this team's got cooked all season. You had 16, they had 6. So, even when they do some of the things right that you know that they have to do to win games.
Yeah.
It's still not, let me ask you this. Down a 6-point game at halftime, right? The team goes on a nice little, I think at one point it was 11-point lead for Kansas late there in the first half. They go on a nice little run. They're able to cut it to 6 at half. Did you feel like they had any chance to win that game at halftime? Because I didn't. I was like, oh, wow, 6-point game, and you haven't played well, but I wasn't really overly optimistic, and I usually am that overly optimistic guy, but again, not when you've lost 10 of your last 11. I just can't be.
Yeah, no, I didn't feel good. And then they made it even tighter in the second half. And I had a text from my buddy. He goes, please just win this game. And I didn't even reply to him because, well, I had things coursing through my body, but I didn't have any faith. And sometimes you just don't have it. I know people want to get all negative and yell and get pissy and say Hugs ain't got it, right? Because that's just what some people do. I ain't going to go there. I'd like to see what he does in the transfer portal, see what happens after the season, see if you can find a way to turn this thing around quickly because it's out there. I mean, it exists a path to be not just good, but very good next year.
Texas Tech's the blueprint.
Yeah, exactly. Same way that you see West Virginia football, they lose a bunch of close games. They go out, they get a new offensive coordinator. That's what happened with Baylor. Baylor lost a lot of games in the COVID year. They get a new offensive coordinator, change their scheme, come back, and they're good. You can flip things around now faster than you've ever been able to flip things around. So that's sort of where I have my eye. What can Bob Huggins do to jump into the 21st century here and start grabbing some portal guys?
Because that's absolutely right, because that's what you have to do. I mean, like, you have to turn this team over this summer, right? You have to, as much as you can in a collegiate setting versus a professional team where guys are on contracts and things like that. Like, you got to blow this thing up to an extent. Like, there's got to be an inordinate amount, you like that big fancy word that I couldn't even pronounce, of roster turnover this offseason. Because again, there's the examples of the teams are there. I mean, Texas Tech, the majority of their guys are from the portal, and they've got a shot to win the whole thing this year. They are a legitimate top 10 team. That's going to be the interesting thing this summer, because I think we can look back at them, and you take away the 2019 class for this basketball team, I think was the one that had Shibwe and Deuce and Emmett Matthews. I believe Emmett Matthews as well, too. Some good players in that 2019 class, but we haven't really recruited well other than that year over the last few years. Like, Taz came in that class as well, too. And yeah, we know what Bob Huggins and the staff did with guys like Javon Carter and guys like Deuce McBride, and they deserve credit for that, obviously. But I just think there's a real, like, they don't love to recruit. And Bob Huggins, I mean, he hasn't really shied away from that. I think he is an old school guy in a new era. It's a different age of recruiting, and I think, this is a totally different topic that maybe we could discuss at the end of the season, but I think to an extent the Shibwe stuff kind of irked him too, where he got that guy, McDonald's All-American, he held off Kansas and Kentucky and Duke and all these other schools that wanted him, and then it didn't pan out, and then it didn't work out. And I think that kind of broke his spirit of recruiting a little bit in a way.
Yeah.
The energy, the enthusiasm, the want to that it takes to recruit and especially hit the transfer portal, and some of the shadiness that, let's be honest too, that you have to operate with in there. I just don't know if Huggins wants to do that at this stage of his career.
Yeah, that concerns me. And I think there are ways that you can go about this and make it easier on yourself. I mean, I heard this on another podcast. It was Brad Howe. He was talking about, some guy that he had talked to for another program. They basically did it from an analytics standpoint. Okay, what are we looking for? Okay, here's a guy who shoots 38% from three, who gets to the rim. He converts this many percent of his layups, and he's 6'4", something like that, right?
Right.
And then bang, 30 players. Yeah, 30 players in the transfer portal. Bang, pop up right there. You can make it easier on yourself. And then, okay, now who do we need to scout? I also think, you really need to ask yourself a question. Who do we want to be? Like, you can go out and I think they need a guy like Derek Culver. I mean, those guys don't grow on trees, but, I thought this would be a 4-out team this year, and they'd shoot a bunch of threes and stuff. And they still, at times, I know Taz Sherman and Sean McNeil take the majority of the shots, but, they still, when they need a basket, it's funny. Like, a lot of the times they'll still try to throw it in close to a guy who's not going to score. I mean, that just seems bizarre to me.
Yeah,
but that's the way
they can't operate in the half court. They just can't.
They can't. I mean, but that's the way Bob Huggins looks at it. He goes, okay, we need a bucket. Let's get it close and let's put it up and in. Well, you don't have guys who can do that. So go try to find a guy who could do it. And then I guess whenever it comes to the identity question, do you want to go back to Press Virginia? Do you want to go out in the portal and grab two guys who are, 6'9" wings who maybe they're going to score from a volume perspective or create offensive rebounds, but they can guard the ball, right?
Yeah.
And they can run. I mean, again, these dudes don't grow on trees, but do you want to hit the portal, get a bunch of old dudes and play Press Virginia? Do you want to try something different? You need to develop an identity for who you are before you hit the portal, I think.
Yes.
Instead of just get guys and then go, okay, what do we got here? And we're just getting guys to get guys, which is sort of what I feel like happened. I think they were intentional in trying to grab some blocks, like some rim protectors, and that's why they got DC and Pauly
and
Cap.
DC and PP.
DCPP, baby. But I think you need to be a little bit more
out.
intentional in terms of the way you want to play. And
yeah,
we'll see if they look at it that way. But I think Bob Huggins, I mean, every year you get closer to retirement, right? But I think he's closer to retirement mentally than he's ever been because it's just a different sport that he grew up coaching.
Yeah, and he can't love it, and I can't blame him for that because you're right. It's a different sport, it's a different league, it's a different time than
he also doesn't want to leave him in a bad spot though.
That's where I know a lot of people have said, like, oh, is this is it for Huggins? I don't see that happening. Because I don't see him going out on a season like this. At worst, I think he would want to at least leave with a tournament team, know,
Right.
and one that's able to, take him to the dance one last time, and he's able to give that to the program on his way out. But yeah, it's just it's tough too when you kind of lay all that stuff out, and I think you have some really good ideas there, and you make some good points. It's like, it just, man, I don't know what the step forward is next year. All that I got right now is you're a little encouraged by what you've seen from some of the young guys, right? Like the Seth Wilsons and the Kobe's. There's a little bit there to be encouraged by, but you need, if we're just looking towards next year, I think the things that could help you turn this around. You need JB to take that next step forward. I know
Oh yeah.
we've been saying this all year. Everyone's been saying this all year, and he's had a lot of really good moments, and he's played good, relatively basketball for the most part. But there's still another level to his game that he can get to. With his size, with his skill set, he's still got another level where he can be one of the best players in the Big 12. You need Isaiah Cottrell to finally have that off season, to put on some weight, to work with a strength and conditioning trainer, to not be rehabbing his Achilles, to have some time to do some strength training. I think you need those two things to happen, and then if you can supplement around that, all of a sudden, and maybe the Big 12 comes back to earth instead of having like 8 teams that are just world beaters. You could be a viable team once again next year. But it's, as I say this, that's a lot of things that have to go your way in the coming months.
Oh, it definitely is, but it's definitely possible now more than ever. It's not like football where you're plugging and playing and you can fix some of your weaknesses, but you're just not going to be able to hit all of them in the portal. You can, if you have a great portal offseason, you can hit all your weaknesses.
Yes, yes.
So let's just, I'm going to wait and see what happens. I believe in Bob Huggins. He's a smart guy.
Believe in Bob.
He wants to win. It kills him to be losing. He does
Yeah.
not want to leave this program in a bad spot. And if that means changing things up, change things up. Now, if he doesn't, well, now that's a different conversation.
Crowley, we got our first Twitter question from Wumbo. All right. He slid into the DMs of the Eers and Beers account.
Oh, a DM.
He said, guys, can you give me some optimism about the future of WVU hoops? This season is what it is, but the fact that we're losing so much after this year scares me. Or maybe it should encourage me, with a question mark. Also, Adam crushed it this week, filling in for Mark Madden. You and Wes get me through my weekly 1,000 miles of driving. Well, thank you for listening, Wumbo, and be safe out there on the roads. And it sounds like you're probably some kind of a truck driver, and my wife works in that business. And on the corporate side of things, my wife isn't a truck driver, but I got mad respect for everybody that does that. Thank you for everything that you do.
I could just see Morgan driving around with like a big jaw and you got a big Jason
rig
Kendall size.
Big rig Morgan.
Is wearing a wife beater, just spitting out the truck window.
Optimism about the future of WVU hoops. That's what Wumbo wants.
Bob Huggins.
You
still got Huggy Bear.
You still got Huggy Bear. And you know what? I think this program, it's hard for all of us because we're so day to day, and sometimes you can't see all these things, or you maybe miss the forest through the trees. But I'm not going to sit here and say that we're some blue blood. I'm not going to lie in that regard, but WVU is an attractive program. We've got very nice facilities. The Coliseum is historic and just had a really nice facelift. You're in a great conference. You've got one of the better practice facilities in the country. Like, again, I'm not sitting here saying we're Kentucky or Duke or UNC but WVU basketball, I think, is in a good place. From John Beilein to Bob Huggins, from everything that's transpired over the last 20 years for this program, we're going to be okay. We're not going to go back to the dark ages. But again, you know the path in front of you. You just got to be willing to make some things work.
When they've had bad seasons in the past, you had the Jordan McCabe freshman year where they're getting run by FCGU or whatever it was in the
Florida Gulf
CBI.
Coast.
Yeah, I think they scored 109 points on us in the CBI
I thought
tournament.
I had blocked that one out of my memory. Thanks a lot.
I mean, best of 3. We lose 2 in a row to those guys, whatever. So that's a terrible year, and you're thinking, how? And then the next year, they were really good, and especially given expectations, and the tournament gets pulled out from under you. But you had just beat Baylor at home.
I was going to say, right when you just had your biggest win of the season.
Right. And I mean, you struggled down the stretch, but you beat Baylor at home, and you've got dudes, and okay, let's go make some noise. Let's take some swings at it. The next year, you're a 3 seed. So We also saw back before the Press Virginia, right? They were lousy. And then all of a sudden they went to the Sweet 16 in 3 out of 4 years. Whenever things get dark, things generally turn around
Yeah,
quickly with Hugs. So
that's a really
I
good
don't,
point by you. I
hey,
like those. I like those
it's
examples.
it's cockeyed optimism, perhaps, but I trust the man with 900 plus wins. I do.
In that vein, we are still enthusiastic and optimistic. We'll take your tweets, by the way. Ears and Beers is the Twitter account. You can get at us both personally. Wumbo on the board there, Crowman, is the first ever tweeter to the Ears and Beers podcast. But yeah, if you guys got questions about anything, feel free to slide into our DMs or just hit our menchies, as Adam would say. And yeah, we'll take your questions as we roll along. Adam, before we talked a little transfer portal here. I want to get some transfer takes from you on the football side of things. Before we do that, to round out the show, one last thing here. This has been known that the WVU Coliseum is the athletic department, the MAC probably specifically, right? The Mountaineer Athletic Club, soliciting sponsorship potentially for the naming rights of the Coliseum. That's something that's been out there for about a year. Hasn't happened yet. Obviously, they're waiting for the right dancing partner, for the right offer to come in, if they are going to name it the something something WVU Coliseum. Well, Bob Huggins has an idea. Friday night, or actually, sorry, Saturday morning, I should say, after the fish fry, which, by the way, big ups to everybody that was a part of that. $2.5 million raised. That's always one of the best events of the year. I'd love to go to it. I'd love to get
What
a table.
An expensive
Woo.
friggin' fish fry, man. I mean, jeez.
Well,
I want to
Adam,
go down to my local church, grab a $4 pint and a little piece of fish.
and an $11 fish box with coleslaw and mac and cheese. Yeah, that's the Western Pennsylvania way, baby. But a big part of the reason why they were able to raise $2.5 million at the fish fry on Friday night was because of Dave Portnoy, the president, the founder. I don't believe he's CEO anymore. I believe he's handed over those reins. But the founder and president of Barstool Sports, of course, Dave Portnoy, no ties to West Virginia or WVU. He's a Michigan grad from Boston, and he donated $500,000 at the fish fry on Friday night. And hey, good for him. Thank you. That's amazing. Again, huge number, $2.5 million. Bob Huggins, Saturday morning, Adam, takes to Twitter. 3-tweet series here, all right? So you know when the Huggy Bear is giving you multiple tweets, it's serious. Can't thank Dave Portnoy enough for taking time to fly to Morgantown for my fish fry to benefit my mother's charity that is so near and dear to my heart. Together we will conquer cancer and win the biggest game of them all. The amazing thing about Dave is that he represents what the American dream is all about. What he has built, the industry that he has taken over and set the precedent for is incredible to me. There's only one last thing to accomplish. Hear me out. The number 6 Kansas Jayhawks come to Morgantown to play the West Virginia Mountaineers in the historic WVU Barstool Sports Coliseum on the campus of West Virginia University. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think? And of course, Portnoy quote tweeted that and said, "I'm in." The Barstool Coliseum, Adam, yes or no?
I am fundamentally against just about everything that Barstool stands for, and Dave Portnoy is, well, he's been great for small business. He's a misogynist. He's a pig. He uses racially charged language. He's, I don't think, a good guy, and that's putting it on the mild side of things. But I've long since had to put aside my morals when it comes to sport.
Separate the artist from the art?
That's exactly right. I mean, it's been hard rooting for Ben Roethlisberger all those years because of what he was accused of doing, and yet on Sundays, if he throws a touchdown pass, I found myself doing things like this. Yeah. And so, the youngins like Barstool. If that means that the MAC gets more money, which they desperately need to find new ways to do, I think that's a good idea. And maybe it leads to an NIL opportunity where they do get another McDonald's All-American guy because he's doing a podcast through Barstool that pays him $100,000, right? Something like that. We just saw, at least there were the rumors, I didn't follow up on it, the kid who wound up going to Jackson State. There was supposed to be that tie-in with Barstool. I don't know.
Yes, I think there was. I think there was. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
some NIL money.
maybe something like that can happen too if you have a tie-in with Dave Portnoy and Barstool. I don't love it from a moral standpoint, but listen, I've always said if West Virginia needs to cheat to win a national championship and we find out years later that that's the case, I'm more than fine with it because we still get that moment. If it has to be a little bit dirty to bring in more money to the university and you have to slap Barstool on the Coliseum, I think I can handle that too, especially considering we can all kind of like in our minds tweak it to be talking about Bob Huggins' Barstool that he has on the side of the court. The Huggins Barstool Coliseum. How about that?
I do agree. Although I would like, I agree with. Here's where I'm at with all this.
Yeah,
I agree with your premise of like money and cheat. I would take the Louisville, right, where you win a national championship and then you suck for the next decade. I don't care about that. Although I wouldn't even classify this as cheating if someone's just paying money for the naming rights.
This isn't cheating.
Yeah, this isn't cheating. This is just
I'm
business.
just trying to equate the dirtiness.
I've always been indifferent on Barstool Crowley. I don't love it. I don't hate it. You know, I think it is. Listen, for as much as like I don't think Dave is the greatest dude. Now, again, he does a lot for small business. He does a lot for charity, but that also doesn't excuse everything that people do in their life. I mean, no. There's been a lot of really bad people that have done a lot of really good things for charity. And I'm not saying Portnoy's a really bad person or anything like that.
Bad person.
He necessarily. I don't like guys that are in your face. Here's how sick I am. Here's how funny I am. Here's how wealthy I am. And that's kind of been Portnoy's shtick over the years. And again, it's worked for him, and I'm sure in person he's a nice guy. But I've always been indifferent on the Barstool thing. I know it feels like everyone's got to have a take. You either love Barstool or you hate it and you think they should be canceled. It's like the same way I am with Joe Rogan. Like, I'm indifferent. I don't care. I don't love Joe Rogan. I don't hate Joe Rogan. I don't listen to Joe Rogan. I don't care. I don't love Barstool. I don't hate Barstool. I don't really consume Barstool content. I don't care. I think they do have some incredible personalities. Like, I think part of my Take podcast is hilarious with Big Cat and PFT. I think Troops, their guy that does soccer for them, that does like the English Premier League, he's hilarious. Now, I also think they have some just absolutely jabronis that they employ, and I don't need to name the names there because, again, that's just not what I'm into doing. You like what you like. You don't like what you... I'm not one of these people that, goes to the Facebook comments and screams about how much I hate the Kardashians or how much I hate Kanye West because I really just don't care about these things.
Right.
I'm indifferent. But Adam, listen, I ain't too proud to beg. I mean, if this would be a huge thing for the athletic department to have a company like Barstool attached, like, that's fine with me.
They're currently not making money off of something that everyone makes money off of. Like, regardless of whether it's Barstool or not, it's time, especially when you consider that a lot of the money that would otherwise be going to the Mountaineer Athletic Club is now going to be going to the Country Roads Trust,
NIL,
which is going to wind up going into the pockets of the players, which is a good thing, but there's only so much money. There's a finite amount of money that's going to be poured into the program in one way or another. People care about the program. They care about the players, and you still don't have more money. You still only have the same amount of money to spend. So I think you need to find creative ways to start making money for the MAC. And this isn't even a creative way. This is just a way that needs to happen.
Right. And listen, man, I was in the car yesterday with the wifey driving home from Target, and Remixed to Ignition by R. Kelly came on the shuffle there.
Bad Guy, great song.
I'm not thinking about R. Kelly peeing on people when that song comes on, all right? When Man in the Mirror comes on I'm not thinking about Michael Jackson and booty holes. I'm just not. And yeah, I'm indifferent on Barstool. Don't love it, don't hate it, but if it brings us money, if it brings us success, if it's good for the university, sure, bring it on.
I ain't too proud.
Listen, buddy, I'd do much more than dance with Dave Portnoy to get a national championship, all right? I'd sell my soul. I mean, so this is nothing. I
just so badly want to go to another Final Four. I
want to win the Big 12 tournament, man. I want to win the Big 12 tournament.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's happening this year, so don't worry.
Hope you're right.
They got to win 4 straight games.
It's the only way that they're going to get into the tournament is by winning the Big 12 at this point.
They have 3 Big 12 wins on the season. They're going to get 4 in a row in Oklahoma City.
All right, before we get out of here, I need your transfer takes. You know, we had another announcement with the football program. Daryl Porter Jr. Entering the transfer portal. I kind of turned on the microphone earlier in the week and did some venting, not necessarily about him specifically, but just the greater landscape of college sports and how it's changed. And you know, here's where I come down on the transfer portal, and I'll let you run with this because I gave my opinion in a way too long rambling podcast on Wednesday, but it's like, dude, when the transfer portal was first rolled out, I think it had good intentions, like everything in life, right? Good intentions, bad results. Where it was supposed to be step one, guy's unhappy, guy enters the portal. Step two, coaching staffs reach out to guy to gauge his interest in their program. But that's not how it's worked. It's been step one, coaching staff reaches out to guy about program, and then step two, guy enters the portal. To me, that can't happen. That's tampering, and even in the NBA, even in the NFL, tampering is illegal. This thing is the Wild West, and we kind of knew that this was going to happen, but it's just frustrating for programs like WVU that, you know, that feel like the roster's getting turned over every month, and you just don't even know who half your guys are.
Yes. I heard your podcast the other day. There's a lot I agree with. I think you can never put the toothpaste back in the tube. No one's going to let that happen. The players it's just not. The NCAA, listen, I'm a player empowerment kind of guy, but the NCAA screwed the pooch on this when they just let it all happen at once. The NIL, the transferring, the immediate eligibility, all that shiz went down at once with no way to police any of it. And so it winds up becoming the wild, wild west. My two solutions would be, if you transfer, I do think you should have to sit out a year, but I think you should be able to retain all of your eligibility.
Love it.
That's one. And then the other is, listen, there's a free agency period in the NFL. There's transfer periods in soccer. You've got to put dates on this thing. It can't just be all the time.
The week before spring practice starts, you're entering the portal.
Right. You can't have that happen.
You know what, actually, and I didn't say this on the podcast earlier in the week too, when I, you know, had a mental breakdown by myself in the iHeartRadio studios in Pittsburgh. Like, the reaction from the team on all of this encouraged me.
Yes, this is one they didn't see coming.
They didn't see this coming. They seemed pissed off at the timing of this and how Daryl Porter Jr. did this, and that makes me feel happy because it makes me feel like it was more of a one-off than maybe is this a cultural issue like we've discussed every time someone hits the portal.
Well, and especially we just find out that West Virginia's entire defensive staff just got extensions and raises, right? So they're all going to be around, which has been
huge.
Yeah, I mean, that's massive. The defense has found a way to get it done even with guys leaving and with young players. So that's encouraging. This is one that hurts on the surface because he's a guy who played well this year. I think PFF had him as their highest graded defender. I mean, I'll, fine, but that's definitely one you're gonna be missing. But you need to find a way to make it so it's okay between this date and this date you can transfer, and maybe even another solution, Wes, is between this date and this date you can transfer and you don't have to sit out. But after this date, if you want to transfer, you do have to sit out, so that it's not necessarily punitive punishment. But it's, hey, let's make this happen because it is about the kids first and foremost. I will always say that.
Sure.
But after the kids, what about the fans that pay all the money to go see them and support the university and pour their hard-earned cash into this?
Yeah, because if that dries up, the whole ship goes down. It's the ecosystem of college football. You can't just survive on the 15 elite programs.
Absolutely can't. And,
it's like I made that European soccer example on the podcast. Like, the Manchester Uniteds and the Liverpools, right, and the cities, and they don't exist without West Ham and Southampton and Newcastle. Like, you need that ecosystem. You need to sell those tickets. You need that money for TV deals and revenues and all that stuff. And that's what I think they're in danger of poo-pooing on, because there's a lot more programs like WVU and Iowa State and NC State than there is, Alabama and Clemson.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, I think the days of West Virginia, or not that it's ever been great, but the days of West Virginia having any type of, hey, we've got a two deep that we feel comfortable about, I just don't think those exist anymore in the middle tier college football.
Agreed.
You're just not going to be able to be deep. How many guys can you get one for one, right? Guy leaves in the transfer portal. You can grab another guy that fills in admirably. I mean, that's almost what you're looking for. But getting 2 for 1 for teams like West Virginia, I just don't think it's realistic.
Yeah, and I saw some numbers floating around. It's like, I think in the last 2 years, like 40 guys have entered the portal or left the program, and we've brought in 6. So maybe if that 6 number were a little bit bigger as well, too, we wouldn't be having some of these meltdowns or overreactions. But I think you're right. It's, you always were kind of struggled to have a really good 2 deep at these, mid-tier programs like us. Like we're not an elite blue blood, but we're not junk. We're not Vanderbilt or Kansas football. We're not Rutgers football out here either. Yeah, exactly. But that's what you got to navigate now. That's what everybody's got to navigate. And I think you have some really good ideas there. Transfer window time. Maybe there's some exceptions where, like, if you transfer after your freshman year, like if you're just one and done with a program, clearly it wasn't the right fit, clearly it wasn't the right place, you don't have to sit out. Like if you transfer after your freshman year. If there's a head coaching change, you don't have to sit out because you're allowed to leave because, the guys that recruited you, like caveats like that. But when you've got 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year players that are, transferring the week before spring practice starts, again, it's not because those guys were disgruntled. It's because other schools reached out to them and got in their ear and that tampering word, and they decided to bounce. And that's where I think you have to draw a clear line because, again, it is all about the kids, as you said. And that's why I think I said that in the podcast throughout the week. I wanted to be clear. To me, transfer portal and NIL is a separate conversation. Jalen Bridges should be able to get that pepperoni roll money, baby. But transfer portal, you got to, because again, even in the NBA, even in the NFL, they fine teams millions of dollars. They dock draft picks for stuff like this, for tampering.
What if?
You just can't have that happening. You'll ruin the sport for real. And I know a lot of people have been saying that in a lot of ways it's hyperbolic. You'll ruin the sport if that's going to be allowed to continue.
I don't think it would be the worst thing either for freshmen not to be able to make NIL money. I mean, that's sort of a departure from my view on all this.
On capitalism.
Well, my view on them specifically being able to profit off of what the university profits off of in a form, right? But I think if you are a senior in high school and you've got all these colleges that came and they saw you, and hey, by the way, Little General's gonna give you pepperoni rolls and $100,000 if you come to West Virginia. I'm not allowed to say it, but what if I say it? Okay. You can't do that then if you're not allowed to profit in year number 1, if you're not allowed to dive into the NIL. I don't know what the solution is. I think there's a couple of possible answers that we've sort of gone over, but it's going to keep being fluid. It's interesting. College sports has changed. And I think Nico Marchiol is going to be the starting quarterback day 1.
You son of a.
Day 1.
That was my question to get us out of here.
Day 1.
September 1st. Backyard brawl, Heinz Field.
Nico Marchiol. I don't want to do that anymore.
And here's to you, Nico Marchiol. Morgantown loves you more than you will know. Whoa,
don't go. Don't transfer, please. Just stay.
Is that
somewhere else?
This has been listen, I think we've picked up some new listeners along the way here. And thanks to all of our friends on Twitter who have plugged the podcast for us. We appreciate you guys. Listen, those of you who've been sharing the podcast on Twitter and helping us get the word out about this thing, just know when we finally meet in person, all right, on a fall Saturday in Morgantown, whether it be this fall or next fall or any of the falls, I got some merch for you guys, all right? If you've been one of the people who's been plugging us on Twitter, I remember. And I got a t-shirt, hat, maybe a pint glass for you. All right, we appreciate it. But for our new, pint glasses, Crowley. How about that? I got some things in the works. All right, I'll talk to you after we cut the recording off. For our new listeners, though, kind of the running bit that we've had throughout the offseason here is who's going to be the Mountaineers' starting quarterback. Game 1, September 1st, Thursday, Heinz Field, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, against those stinking Pitt Panthers. We've gone from Jackson Dart, oh man, that was a fun week or two, to Tyson Bagent, the D2 quarterback out of Shepherd. Crowley, Nico, your answer?
Nico, I did a song.
I'm still going with Will Goose Cratter. We'll see who's right.
I didn't hear a song from you.
This thing all shakes out.
I didn't hear a Crowder song.
I sang the Markio song for you. I mean, what do you want from me?
I know you're on Team Markio more than you even know.
You know what You know what? You know what I just realized is Will Goose Crowder. Willie G. I mean, come on. How dare I, though? There's only one Willie G, all right? And he's slinging it for the Cowboys right now? The Cowboys. Crowley, Monday night against TCU. I mean, you got 5 games left for hoops. You got to win at least 5 of them. So let's go do it.
Suck my Dixon.
Oh, yeah. Jamie Dixon, that rat. I got this teething, this gnawing, this rat. You think Jamie Dixon and Brad Marchand are related?
Yes.
So we'll talk to you Monday night. Instant reaction. Again, thanks to everybody that's been plugging the podcast for us. We appreciate you guys. We're on Apple, Google, iHeart, Spotify. You can see our beautiful mugs on YouTube. And a reminder, too, as well, April 23rd, we'll be at the spring game. So make sure you holler at us. Come say hello. If you're going to be in Morgantown, you want to drink some cold ones with the boys. Talk to you in a couple days. Tomorrow night, I guess, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, maybe tonight, after we hopefully get back in the saddle and get a win against that rat, Jamie Dixon. He's Adam Crowley. I'm Wesley Euler. This has been the Eers and Beers podcast, episode 46. And as always, let's go Mountaineers.
Let's go drink some coffee.